Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Jazakumullah khair for coming out to our second installment of the Beloved to the Beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam series. And we're blessed to have Dr. Ishmael Nausrudeen, mashallah, with us today. I'm going to tell a short story. I embarrassed Abdullah last week, so I'm going to embarrass him a little bit this week, inshallah. So Ishmael, mashallah, he's a doctor of physical therapy. He's, mashallah, very knowledgeable about Islam and someone I look up to. And so when I first became Muslim, almost 8 years ago, I joined the MSA at my college. And he was actually one of the first brothers I met in the MSA room. One of the first brothers I met in the MSA room. And I just remember him taking the time out to actually acknowledge me, say salam, ask me what my name is. And that was something that not many people were doing. And so that always resonated with me. And also, we come from a similar background, live around the same area, shared a lot of the same experiences. We're from the same, like, we're both Caribbean, from the Caribbean. Like, we both kind of experienced and know what life is like. And before I became Muslim, I never knew there were such things as like a Caribbean Muslim that was actually practicing. And then I met Ishmael, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been trying to find all my life. Really, like, what an example of Caribbean, Muslim who had the similar upbringing and stuff like that. So, firstly, I don't mean that. I don't say that to break your back, but I say that as a means of complimenting you and praising you and giving you your flowers, inshallah. We're blessed to have you here. It's been years since I think we've seen each other, and I'm glad that the time that we do see each other is in the remembrance of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, in the importance of this series, right? We talked about last week why it's important, but we should all love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam more than we love our own selves. We should love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam more than our parents, more than our siblings, more than our children. We should love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam just on a whole nother level. And in order to really love him, we have to learn how those around him love him. Last week we talked about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and Brother Abdullah gave us a beautiful breakdown of what that that entailed and the stories and the sacrifices that Abu Bakr made. And this week, inshallah, we're going to talk about Khadijah radiallahu anha, and just everything about her life, her connection to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their marriage, obviously her death, and how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam honored her afterwards, inshallah. So, without further ado, let's just get it started, inshallah. My first question to you, Brother Ishmael, Dr. Ishmael, is Brother Ishmael, who is Khadijah, and can you tell us more about her life pre-Islam, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Like Brother Sanjay said, we met a while back, and alhamdulillah, I'm happy to be here with him and with you all. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our efforts, our striving to learn this deen and to be, as best Muslims as we can, until the moment when we leave this physical world. Alhamdulillah, the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'een, they all lived lives that we can all take lessons from. And when it comes to the day one, the actual day one Muslim, that's Khadijah radiallahu anha. When Islam came, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received his first revelation, and he was in that moment of discomfort and uncertainty, you had Khadijah radiallahu anha as someone who immediately proclaimed her love for this deen, al-Islam, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. So she, alhamdulillah, from the very moment that Islam came, displayed that certainty that the Prophet ﷺ had very desperately needed in that very vulnerable moment. Khadijah herself, she came from a very noble family, the Qurayshi, and her upbringing and her family culminated into a very beautiful, smart, intelligent, strong-minded young woman. Born in what year? What year was she born? Does anyone know? If she's 15 years older than the Prophet, what year was she born? 555. Alhamdulillah. We should get this guy up here, mashallah. So yeah, 555, she was born. And that is 15 years prior to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like the Prophet, she shared the loss of parents and the difficulty that comes with. And she grew up, in the family home of, her father passed away in battle when she was very young, and she grew up in the family home, and she, then went on to, learning from her cousins and spending a lot of quality time, with the family members, and particularly a few cousins that are notable to make mention of from her early life that helped cultivate, the young woman who she became. First and foremost, we should look at her older cousin, Waraqah bin Nawfal. This is an older cousin who himself was on a journey of Hanafiya, which was quite ironic and unheard of, so to say, at that moment in Mecca, when everything was about idolatry. Waraqah was someone who took the time to access the scripture at that time, whatever scripture was available. He took the time to understand Hebrew and the Old Testament at the time, and what the Christians were, accessing at that time of the Bible, the Torah and the Injil. And this is someone that, in a way, fostered her spiritual upbringing at that time. She would go to him with questions and all sorts of inquiries, and he was someone that always engaged with her and helped her throughout that early time. Another important figure in her early life, of course, I guess this one would be in general, because the Qurayshis trades, was the business they conducted between Yemen and Damascus. So her family was heavily involved in that business, so she kind of grew up into it. And she had nephews that were involved in that business. And so she kind of, in a way, learned that as a family trade as well. The business, the ins and outs, and those types of things. So you can see from early on these two themes here. The religious tarbiyah that she had from her cousin, and the access to this trade of business from her other family members. And then, last but definitely not least, another theme I'd like to mention from that early time period as she was growing up as a young girl was the culture and tradition of the Qurayshis. These are people who took a lot of pride in certain cultural things that, alhamdulillah, can be carried over to Islam, which was the honoring of the Kaaba. They took a lot of honor and they took a lot of care to make sure that the Kaaba was, being able to accommodate the pilgrims and all the difficulties that travelers may face. She grew up in a clan and a family that, cared about those things. So you see, from very early on, she had the deen from her cousin Waraqah. She had the trade and the business from other family members. And then, of course, in general, she had that culture and that rich tradition that the Qurayshis had and the pride that they took to care for this holy place, Mecca.
So, this is a question for everybody. What does Khadijah mean? Like, what does it actually mean, the name Khadijah? Surely somebody knows. I'm sure somebody does. Yeah.
It basically means like a premature baby.
It means premature, right? And Khadijah herself was obviously premature. And some of the scholars mention the wisdom behind that is that she was ahead of her time. SubhanAllah. Just who she was as a person, she was ahead of her time. So I want to kind of touch on more. Well, actually, before we get there, what was her nickname? What was the name that they called her? Even before Islam.
So she had a few nicknames. I'm not sure if this one was before Islam, but Sayyida, Khadijah, Tahira.
That's the one I had in mind. Tahira. Meaning what? What's Tahira? Tahira mean? Pure, right? And why would they call her that? The reason why is that because she never backbited, and she never insulted or hurt anyone, and she never got upset with anyone before Islam, and obviously afterward. This was her character. This is part of who she was, right? And so I want to kind of touch on her meeting with the Prophet, how that went. Can you expand on kind of like the trades and the business side of things, and also kind of the entire marriage proposal aspect of it as well?
Yeah, well, here we have something that Bollywood and Hollywood can't compete with, right? The love story of Khadijah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She, being that Warqa had been there for her from a very young time, and he himself was accommodated with the concept that this prophet should be coming to Arabia, she had general knowledge of certain attributes and traits that such a prophet might have. This was some background knowledge that was, in her subconscious, you'd say. But before we jump there, let's talk about her first two marriages. She had first married a man, and then they had two kids, both of which continued to live with them. And of course, shortly after their marriage, he passed away in a battle. And this actually happened a second time. She married another man, and he passed away shortly after. They had a daughter, and this guy also passed away in a battle. So at 25 years old, she was widowed twice, which is a tough situation to be in, And I guess the silver lining in that was she gained a lot of inheritance through those situations. First from her parents, then from her first husband, and then from her second husband. So she had gained quite a bit of wealth through inheritance. And coupling that wealth with her business savvy and her connections, she was able to gain some inroads into that international, I guess you could say, business within that region. As we all know, Surah Quraysh, لِإِيلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِيلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. So these were the two trips that the Qurayshis would do in the winter and in the summer. They would go to Yemen, and they would go to Damascus, and they would send their caravans, and they would do business, transaction, and of course, they were good at it. They made their livelihood with it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that in the Quran, that gave them ilaf, such great comfort, and such great serenity of life in the Meccan Peninsula. So, as we all know, with business, there's difficulty, and what's some of the biggest difficulties we'll find during business? What do you guys think? What's up? Traveling, yes, traveling can be arduous and difficult. So she herself did not do that. She had, I guess you could say, her employees do the traveling. What were some other difficulties you think she might have faced in this realm of business? Yeah, dishonesty, that's definitely it. There's a lot of trust involved with these types of business, right? She's not there, the caravans are going, the business is happening, and she has to go off of the word of the guy coming back, the employee coming back. This is how much I made, this is what was sold, and of course, there were instances that she was short-handed. So, as someone who's looking to, continue her inroads in this field, she needed to have trustworthy employees. So she, while at the same time had established herself within that realm, she wanted to make sure she had a trustworthy employee. And there came the conversations within her inner circles, and then who can we get, and things of that nature. And then, long story short, you have the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And on his behalf, on the Prophet ﷺ's behalf, being that she was looking for someone trustworthy, he sort of put the word in. He applied for her, applied for him. So he went to her, had a conversation, and then things got set in motion. And before you know it, the Prophet ﷺ at a young age, was her employee for her next trade caravan to Damascus. And being that she knew certain traits of him and she had a subconscious background of a prophet coming, she wanted to do her homework very well on who this guy is, just in case he might be the one. And so she sent Maisara, I believe, Maisara, to accompany the prophet, to get the, to get all the inner dealings and how he dealt with people, etc., etc., and to report all of that back to her at the end. Yes, the caravan was important, the trade and transaction was important, but at the same time, she wanted to see who this guy really was, and was this the person that she heard about from her uncle, from her cousin Warqa bin Nawfal. So the caravan went, came back, alhamdulillah. Prophet ﷺ, as we know, was an excellent businessman, and they doubled the investment. And there were many things that happened on that journey. We won't discuss all of them, but one very important point that sort of signaled her that, whoa, this guy might actually be that person was his interaction during his trade and transaction. People would query him, swear on such and such God, swear on such and such about this deal. He would decline. He didn't want to swear on Lat and Al-Uzza. He didn't believe in that. And that was a point that really struck her when she heard from Maisara. Here's someone that, yes, he's trustworthy. Yes, he has these great characteristics. But look, he's also upon that deen of Tawheed, of Hanif. So this really stroked a lot of curiosity in her, and you can say that at that moment she was very, very much intrigued to perhaps take this a step further, to learn more, to see if this could possibly be a marriage situation, because she saw these great signs in him. A good point that we should note here is that from the signs that she was looking for, we don't see material things, right, Sanjay? We don't see she's looking for a bank account with 6+ digits, right? We see a sister that is looking for good character. We see a sister that is looking for good akhlaq and good deen. This is what we see, and this is what it piques her interest to take this a step further, So Sanjay, I don't know if you wanted to chime in there, or before we went on further.
So I'll say one thing. So the journey with Islam, with the Prophet ﷺ, he says he would follow the Prophet ﷺ, and the clouds would always shade him. And the trees would shade him, the clouds would follow him. Just like these signs of his prophethood, the fact that this was happening, obviously that helped with this good idea that they had of the Prophet ﷺ. And like you mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ being one of the few that were monotheistic, appealed to Khadijah and had, right? She was also monotheistic as well. So I can jump right into the interaction of the Prophet ﷺ and Khadijah and Nafisa, who kind of orchestrated the whole thing. We can expound on that, inshallah.
Yeah, so, as her interest was piqued, her close companions noticed something was off about her. She was noticeably different. So one of her close companions, Nafisa, she took it upon herself to see what was this that was causing Khadijah radiallahu anha to seem a bit off. And she pried, and she found out. And she took it upon herself to, you can say, see if this was mutual to some degree. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ straight away, and she consulted with him if this would be a possibility. Hey, Prophet Muhammad, I guess he was a prophet at that time, right? But said, Muhammad al-Amin, are you interested in marriage? And he said, no, because he needed to take care of his family. There was some financial difficulty in his current situation. So at that moment, he said no. He wasn't interested at the moment because of those reasons. But she pressed even further. She said, let's imagine that's not a problem. You don't have to worry about the financials. Would you be interested? And then Khadijah's name came up. And then his silence in that moment demonstrated his compliance. And so she went back in a hurry. And they set the plans in motion. And then the formalities, of course, had to take place. She came back with a proposal from Khadijah. It was accepted. But now the formalities of the Prophet ﷺ, his clan, the leaders of his clan, had to go and formally seek her hand in marriage from the leaders of her side. And that conversation happened. Her uncles, at the time, because her father was, of course, deceased, expressed their agreement. Multiple of her uncles, and they, alhamdulillah, they were married, alhamdulillah. And from that moment on, she sought and she took up the responsibility, although she had the means to have servants and all sorts of assistance in the home. She took it upon herself, being that she regarded him such in a high way, and the signs that he demonstrated of possible prophethood, inshallah. She took it upon herself to make sure he never had any discomfort in the home. She took it upon herself to serve him in any capacity that she could. And the love blossomed early on, and they went and they worked together in all of the good things that she was doing before and he was doing before. They came together in a very compatible way. The truthfulness, the Hanafiya, worshipping of one God, the helping of the destitute and the needy of the society that they lived in. And of course, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam no longer had those financial difficulties. He's married to the most prominent Qurayshi woman of Mecca, financial and otherwise, social and financial. So, alhamdulillah, from this moment on, the sky was the limit, you could say, within their early marriage.
One thing to note there is Khadijah, she had a dream prior to the marriage of the Prophet. She had a dream that the sun had descended into her home. This was her dream, and obviously her cousin, Walaka, said that this is a sign that you'll marry a noble person or a prophet. And subhanAllah, the sign did indeed come true. I think it's also important to mention that she refused many proposals before this, right? Of those, Abu Jahl, right? And Abu Jahl at the time, obviously he wasn't called Abu Jahl at the time. These are the name that was given to him after Islam because of his hatred for the Prophet. But at the time, it's like, how do you refuse a guy like that who has all this power, all this nobility, has all this respect amongst the people of Quraysh? She said, no, I'm not interested. Abu Sufyan also, she was not interested. Obviously at the time he was a Muslim, so you understand what I'm saying. Like he was, these are two people that end up being some of the harshest enemies of the Prophet, for a considerable amount of time. And then also in Surah Duha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and Allah has found you, poor and enriched you. And some of the scholars say that this is, referencing Khadijah, his marriage with Khadijah. The fact that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this wealth, both materialistically but also spiritually and nurturing him. And obviously she was married when she was 40 and he was 25. 15 years difference. He was the one that moved into her household. Right? This situation aside, but the entire life of the Prophet ﷺ was all about breaking these things of our society that may seem strange or weird, or these social ills, right? These things have to be a certain way in our society. Even till now, the Prophet ﷺ really came and undid all of the injustices that were happening, right? Think about his marriage to Khadijah. The age difference, the fact that he moved into her home, the fact that she was the wealthy one, that could never fly in today's world. It really couldn't. It could never, right? But this is the example that the Prophet ﷺ gave with his first marriage. and then also future marriage. You know, it was never about, he always prioritized what two things? Character and religion. Those were the two most important things for the Prophet ﷺ. Everything else was, obviously up to your culture and whatnot. So let's talk about kind of their marriage now. They had how many children did Khadijah and the Prophet ﷺ have? I heard it. 6. Yeah. Can we name all 6? These are things we should know. We were able to name a lot of things that are irrelevant and not important, but these are the important things that we should know as not Ibrahim.
So we have Qasim, we have Fatima, Abdullah, Zainab, Ruqayya,
That's 6? Yeah, that's 6. So 4 daughters and 2 sons. And they had 6 children in the span of 5 years. Right? So let's now talk about another thing I think is very important to mention. They only ever had one argument in their household. One argument. And that was because Khadijah was encouraging him to kind of network. Go to the market and talk to his, relatives, his people. And obviously there was, I think, kind of like a pagan, ritual that was going on. And then the Prophet said, I'll never worship, these idols. He didn't even want to be in the same place. Right? So now let's turn to, unless you have something you want to add on to like their marriage, after the fact. If there's anything before we get into like Revelation and stuff like that. Is there anything you want to add on?
Yeah, I guess, to the point that Sanjay brought up, from 25 to 40, she essentially was not interested in marriage. She focused on other aspects of her life, and here came the one thing that would pique her interest in marriage was someone with impeccable character, someone with such good character and deen. This is what brought her back to considering marriage. So I feel like this is something that is very relevant and a point that we should take from her life. And we should apply to today, apply to, as we raise our kids, as we interact with our family, her approach and what piqued her interest to consider marriage. So that's the one thing, I'd like to make sure we highlight.
And it's also important to kind of mention that Khadijah would show her love for the Prophet ﷺ in many different ways. One of the ways is if she met someone who helped the Prophet ﷺ, she would gift them with something. There's a narration that like the woman who breastfed the Prophet ﷺ, Khadijah finally met her, and she gifted her 40 sheep and 1 camel, just because of her relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. Right? And that's I think something that we all can benefit from as well. So let's start talking about kind of revelation. The Prophet ﷺ starts having these dreams that are coming true for 6 months straight, and kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so they were living that life. Like I said, the sky was the limit. But even though they had all material means to, live in any rich manner, they chose to give back a lot. That's their marriage. You can look at it, and you can broad brush it as 2 people serving others. 2 people serving others in their marriage. And as years went on, closer to the time of the revelation started, the Prophet ﷺ, as we all know, would do spiritual retreats. He would get into more of a meditative mindset in the cave of Hira. And this went on for quite some time. The dreams were happening, and he would disappear for extended periods of time. And she would get worried, and she would send some of her servants after him, and she would want to check up on him. And she herself went. As you can imagine, she's 55 if he's almost 40, and she's walking a distance of a few kilometers, and she's hiking up a 800 meter high? I don't know the exact metrics, but it's a pretty high mountain. And she's 55, she's hiking up, she's checking, and she's concerned, and this goes on for quite some time until, as we all know, the signs of prophethood start to come, and Jibreel alayhi salam starts to visit, and she played that very pivotal role when it actually happened, when the Prophet ﷺ was grabbed by Jibreel and the revelation came. He went back to her when that happened, and he said to her in desperation and in such a discomfort, Zamiluni, Zamiluni. Right, we've all heard this. Cover me, cover me. She was his source of comfort. She was his source of solace and of someone that he could go to in those moments to seek assistance and comfort to get through these difficult times that he went through. And of course, she played that pivotal role as she did before when things were tough, and as she would do as things got tougher. She stood by his side as a brave, as a brilliant, and as a woman of foresight. And she said, when he asked her, what's happening? What's happening to me? Mali, what's going on with me? She guaranteed and she told him, and she said, without a shadow of a doubt, Kalla. She said, Kalla. Allah will never desert you. He will never leave you, as we all know this hadith. And she mentioned a few things regarding him to increase his certainty and his understanding as to why she has such conviction that nothing bad will happen to him. And what were some of the things that she said about him as to why Allah will not do anything bad to him?
He keeps his ties of kinship.
Ties of kinship. He's good to the orphans. He takes care of the destitute and the needy. There's a few more. There's a few more points that she brought up to drive home that nothing bad would happen to someone of his character. Maintains the ties of kin. Takes care of the poor and needy. What else?
Only speak words of truth like that.
Yeah. He's someone that has a truthful tongue. And subhanAllah, from that moment on, she would continue to show that support as the revelations continued. As time went on and the next revelation came, and now instead of, internal belief alone, he had to now go beyond and spread the message. And that's when things got really tough. But she, during that moment of difficulty for him, she professed her belief that he was a prophet. So she became the first Muslim at that moment. Radiallahu anha. So she became the first Muslim, and she, as the revelation continued, as the prophet continued to receive the wahi, she became the first person that reviewed the salah, that reviewed the sequence of the prayer. The very same prayer we just did for Isha, she was the first person to learn it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In their intimacy, in their home, he taught it to her, and they prayed. She was the first congregation with him as an imam, and they had this intimate moment for some time until the command came, when they had to go beyond the family, beyond the household, and spread the message more throughout the larger Meccan community.
I want to make mention of just one thing. The level of reassurance that Khadijah gave to the Prophet ﷺ in that moment. And now think about, I'm not asking you to do some deep reflection here, but in your own homes, the examples that you've seen, whether it's in your own homes or in your own families or close circles, etc. Have you ever seen, we like to romanticize this marriage that the Prophet ﷺ and Khadijah a lot. But have you ever implemented it into our own households or seen, others do it? Very rarely, very rarely. The Prophet ﷺ is secluded, he's by himself, he comes back running, saying, cover me, cover me. You tell me how this will play out in your own households. right? You tell me. Allah, right? This is for you to reflect. You don't have to actually tell me. But you know, this is important. The reassurance that they gave each other. The fact that he was comfortable enough to go to his wife with this. I mean, I'm again, let me not say something I shouldn't say. In terms of like, you know, but I think Muslims especially, we should be better, right? We should be better, and I think Muslim men don't really go to their wives for a lot of things. You know, this is I think he could probably tell me better about the people he's seen and stuff like that. But you know, I think this is something that's very, very important. You know, that we take lessons from this, whether it's in our current marriages or in the future marriages. You know, in what we can you know, find with our spouses. One thing I wanna mention is she's obviously the first believer, and there's a beautiful narration of her asking, of him, someone asking her, or telling her rather, you were the first one I'm calling to the message. And she responds, and I'm the first one to accept the message. Instantly. It was no like, wait, are you sure about this? It was, let's just say it like this, she believed in him before he ever believed in himself. She believed in him before he ever believed in himself. So I said, right? That just sums it up. She was constantly encouraging him the entire way through. Just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never humiliate you, never disgrace you. You're a great person. This is something that, you know, maybe even amongst friend groups, I don't feel like we tell each other this. I can only imagine with like spouses, right? So like, this is just something for us to reflect on and think about. One thing I want to talk about is, I mean, if there's anything else you want to talk about during the time of Revelation, if not, or the start of Revelation, if not, then I think the boycott is a huge next part of this.
So, you know, as you know, يا أيها المدثر, as these ayahs sing out, قم فأنذر, get up and warn others. The Prophet ﷺ now had to go beyond the household. And of course, when there's a certain status quo, when society is running a certain way, and you're saying something different, you might step on some toes. And of course, that's what started to happen. You had the Prophet ﷺ and Khadijah, who were very passionate about Islam, about submission to Allah alone, about the idols being falsehood. You had these two very compassionate people, and of course the other early reverts, including Ali and Abu Bakr and these other early reverts. And then now they're going into society at large, and they're investing. They're having even dinner parties. They're inviting people to their home, utilizing their wealth to spread the da'wah. And you have more and more people coming to the deen. And of course this starts to get the people in charge a little upset. You're messing with the status quo. You're making things a little bit uncomfortable for us. So, long story short, of course, it was very difficult. They made it as difficult as they could for the Muslims. They wanted them to abandon their faith. Little did they know how much these Muslims really believed in the oneness of Allah. We can take just for quick examples, Sumayya, the first martyr. We can take, for example, Bilal, the mu'adhin, and what they went through. Of course, they were the more poor, and of course they were slaves. So they were, you know, the rich class could get away with torturing these Muslims, you know, until others could buy their freedom. Of course, some didn't make it to that. They passed away, like Sumayya and her husband, being tortured for being Muslim. But things started to bubble and bubble until it got to a point where it was boiling. It was boiling in Mecca, and something needed to give. And it was that moment that the Prophet ﷺ decided to advise some of his followers to seek sanctuary in a different area, Abyssinia. And of course, they were successful in doing so. And this angered the chieftains even more. The mushrikeen, such as Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan before he was Muslim, etc. This angered them even further. How can we have our people going to this foreign land and practicing this religion we hate? No, we can't let that happen. Let's go get them back. So they tried to retrieve them. They sent messengers and gifts to try to retrieve them from Abyssinia, but they were declined. That let things boil up even further. So they wanted to have a fix. So what they saw as a way to avoid tribal warfare that would probably continue for centuries, they didn't want to spill blood. So they decided, as opposed to doing that, we will isolate these early Muslims. We're going to isolate them. We're going to kick them out. We're going to cut off all access to communication, to trade. We're going to cut off access to water, to food. Who does that remind us of, unfortunately? SubhanAllah. And how long did this go on? How long did this boycott go on? Who knows? I'm sorry? It was a few years. It was how many years? It was 3 years. 3 arduous years of companions tying rocks to their stomach because there's no food. Of the companions eating as cattle do, whatever grass they could find. 3 years of trying to sneak something in the back door. Maybe Khadijah's nephew could help them out a little bit once in a while. 3 years of children crying. And the other Hashimis that weren't Muslim suffering at the sound of their relatives suffering just outside the city walls. And of course, it was during this time that, first the Prophet's uncle fell sick and passed on. And then shortly after that, Khadijah herself, as an elderly woman at this time, this was, what year was this? This was right before the Hijrah, about a year or two. So this is around 620. Around 620. So she was also getting up there in age. And it was very difficult, as we can imagine. No food, no medicine, no access to basic human needs. And she herself fell ill. And
so one thing I want to add on there, because it's so, I feel like we have to put this into perspective, right? Like, she went from having everything, and the minute revelation came, she's like, I'm going to give away everything for the da'wah. I'm going to give away everything for the Prophet ﷺ, for the one that I love. Everything, all the materialism, I'm going to give it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then this boycott happens. It's important to mention that the boycott was on specific tribes. And Khadijah, radiallahu anha, was not of that tribe that was being boycotted. But she wasn't going to leave the Prophet ﷺ. This boycott that caused her to go from eating, she could be eating the best foods possible with all of her wealth. She had to eat grass. She had to eat all these different things. And, I feel like we don't really think about that too much, right? We don't think about the sacrifice that came with Khadijah, radiallahu anha. She gave up everything. And first encourage and reassure the Prophet ﷺ, right? First encourage and reassure him that you are a prophet. And then everything she had to give up. Not that she had to, but she wanted to. Out of love for the Prophet ﷺ. The series is called The Beloved to the Beloved ﷺ. If this is the biggest lesson you can take from Khadijah's life, right? That she gave up everything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She never once hesitated. And this boycott that caused her to get weak and frail and to just physically, suffer these ailments. It was not something she had to put herself through. But there was no way she was going to leave her beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was just no way. And that's something that should stick with us. There's also a beautiful hadith, I'll let you say it, inshallah. Hadith of Jibreel, when he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he tells the Prophet, this is kind of closer to the end of her life. He says, this is Khadijah coming to you with stew. She's coming to you with some type of food. And when she comes to you, I want you to tell her that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her his Sina. And then Jibreel also gives her his Sina. And tell her about the glad tidings of a pearl palace in Jannah. Khadijah gave up all of her jewelry in this life, everything she had, and she will have a pearl palace in the next. Right? And so when the Prophet tells us to Khadijah, she says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of salam. And she says, وَعَلَيْكُمْ salam to Jibreel. And she even includes the Prophet in that. May Allah's peace and mercy be upon you as well, O Rasul. She just included the Prophet out of love for the Prophet. Even though it had nothing to do with him in that moment, she just included it. Right? SubhanAllah. And so I think we can now talk about Allah's moments with that and stuff like that.
So yeah, it's in such a trying situation, everything she gave up, everything she sacrificed, as you make mention. There she was in her last moments in that camp, in that refugee camp. While she had every opportunity and option not to be there, she chose to be there for the sake of Islam and for her love of the Prophet ﷺ. And she said to have had a fever, and the Prophet ﷺ was by her side, and she took her last breath in that camp, radiallahu anha. And that was what sparked tremendous sadness for the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, her book was now closed, and the Prophet ﷺ was now stricken as he has never been stricken before. He lost his security from his uncle, and he lost his beloved, who from the very moment that they were married stayed by his side. Even though people said things, and even though when he was going through that trying time of receiving the revelation, and people were saying, "Oh, look at this lady going to the mountain, for her husband. What's wrong with them?" All of that difficulty, all of that, noise in the background. She dealt with all of that, and here the Prophet ﷺ lost his confidant. He lost that person that did and dedicated everything she was, everything she had on his behalf. And this was, of course, known to be the year of what? The year of sadness, and prison. This is what followed, and this is when the surah that Brother Sanjay mentioned, came, to elevate the spirit of the Prophet ﷺ.
So just, obviously that's such a difficult time for the Prophet ﷺ. And Amr ibn Yasir, he said that we feared for the Prophet ﷺ's life at that point. We were afraid that he would die afterwards because of, his grief. And that the Prophet ﷺ could be heard crying loudly in his household, right? So I think, obviously that's such a somber moment. And I think the legacy of Khadijah lived on for the rest of his life, and obviously lives on now. It's important to mention that most of the narrations about Khadijah was from Aisha. And why is that? Does anybody know why most come from Aisha? Right, so Aisha just felt very jealous of Khadijah. And the reason why is because the Prophet ﷺ always mentioned her every single day. After her death, he still mentioned her every single day. She says that she was jealous in a way that she, obviously, no one ever felt jealous like that, right? A day did not pass except that he mentioned her. He would not leave his home in the morning until he mentioned her. It's powerful. And then, one day, I'll just paraphrase the story. Aisha says, obviously, she was a very confident person. This is like, part of her personality. Inshallah, in the future we do one about Aisha, but she says, hasn't Allah given you someone who is, better in the place of this, old and toothless person, right? It's quite a comment. And the Prophet ﷺ's face changed. SubhanAllah. His face changed, and she says that I never saw his face change like that except when he was receiving revelation. That's just how much his face changed. He got so angry. And he said, I swear by Allah, Allah has never given me anything better than that. And he says that she believed in me when everyone disbelieved in me, and she considered me truthful when everyone thought I was lying, and that she supported me with her money, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me children by her. You know, just kind of reinforcing all that he felt for Khadijah. And Aisha knew from that day forward not to cross that line. I think that was like obviously a huge red line, right? I don't know if you want to go into, you know, as kind of a final point before we wrap up, but that, you know, the way the Prophet honored her afterwards, you know, what the relatives.
Yeah, I guess a couple of important stories to highlight how much that love continued. One was after the Battle of Badr, when their daughter, Khadijah's daughter, and the Prophet's son, their daughter Zainab, when her husband was captured as a war prisoner, they offered the people of Mecca the opportunity to, you know, to ransom, or they offered the prisoners the opportunity to emancipate themselves by teaching 10 people how to read and write. But he was basically the Prophet's son-in-law, Zainab's husband, was amongst the captives who was fighting in the opposing army. But they chose, Zainab chose to send a ransom for her husband. And what did she send? She sent a necklace that Khadijah had given her on her wedding night. She sent this necklace that she knew her father would recognize. She knew that it would strike a chord deep within him. And as the necklace came, and as he unraveled the bag and opened it, and he saw the necklace, he was stricken with sadness immediately, you know, and he was in that state for some time. And the companions, the Sahaba around him were dumbstruck, like, it's a necklace, you know what's going on, but they didn't know that it was his beloved's necklace. They didn't know that it was this cherished person. After so many years she's been gone, that it's Khadijah, this is her necklace. And that put him in such a sad state. And he said to the Sahaba, she can have her necklace back and you can release him as well. He didn't want to keep the necklace. He wanted his daughter to once again, you know, maintain ownership of that necklace. So that's, you know, a moment, you know, for us to recognize and us to see how much that love never faded, even the slightest bit in his heart. The other moment of great significance, this of course is during the Fath, the conquest of Mecca. Once again, after so many years. And imagine when she was the first Muslims, just the two of them. But now the Fath of Mecca, he's marching to Mecca with an army of 10,000. SubhanAllah. Big difference. And what does he decide to do after a successful mission? He decides to hang out at her grave. Not at the nice house of this chieftain, which he has access to now, because the conquest of Mecca. But he decides to pitch a tent next to her Kaaba and spend some time there. Next to his beloved. In that moment when so many new Muslims are around, they don't know what it was like during those initial moments when he was so vulnerable, when things were so difficult. They don't know the boycott. They don't know all the difficulties that they went through together with the Prophet ﷺ. In that moment of great victory, he shared it with Khadijah in her memory, honoring her by her grave. SubhanAllah. So that love, you know, it's something that we need to take a lesson from. You know, SubhanAllah. How much do we sacrifice? How much can we learn from Khadijah? You know, that the Prophet ﷺ loved her so much and honored her so much from her life. Of course, we had to skip so many different parts of her life. You know, and I'm just going to put a plug here. A nice little book. I don't know if you guys have it, probably do. It's called Khadijah. And it talks about everything we discussed and much more. Very beautiful book. So I encourage you guys to look into that further, inshallah.
So just to sum it all up before we get into the final portion of the evening. I'm just waiting for a cue, honestly. But I think what we can really take from this is the sacrifice of Khadijah had. The sacrifices that she made, right? I mean, there's so much we skipped, but the Prophet ﷺ, even after the death of Khadijah, he would send meat to her relatives and her, her friends, every time he slaughtered an animal. The Prophet ﷺ would, when he heard her sister's voice, he would get kind of excited because it reminded him of Khadijah's voice. And he would invite her to sit, and they would just spend hours talking about Khadijah. So just as there's so much we skipped, but this will suffice for this evening, inshallah. What I want to do next is, I think we have a bit of a very small auction, and the funds will be used to support the center, inshallah. I'm just waiting for the auction items. They're over there. Alright, inshallah. Y'all know how this goes, because I've done 2 of these already here. I think y'all know how this goes. But inshallah, this is to support the center. It's to be able to have programming here that we do here. Obviously the events that take place cannot, take place without, the donations for the center. And I'm connecting this to it, and you guys can hate me for this one. But we literally just spent an entire program talking about sacrifice. And how Khadijah gave up everything for Islam. Everything. Right? Every single thing she had. I'm not asking you to give up everything, right now, but I'm asking you to be generous. One more thing I'll say before we get started. One more thing. It is more concerning to me when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give me opportunities for goodness. It's more concerning to me. I'm more worried if someone doesn't ask me to donate. I'm more worried if someone doesn't ask me to do something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it say about your condition if you no longer have those people coming to you asking you to do something for Allah's sake? May Allah protect us. So inshallah, we're going to get started. So firstly, we have a mystery bag, Khadijah design mystery bag of bookmarks, pencil case stickers, and greeting cards. Last time we did one of these, a brother won it, and everyone was kind of like, Eric, congrats. And then everybody wanted this afterwards when they saw what was inside. Okay, so when I say that, I mean all the brothers, they wanted it. So don't sleep on it. Okay? Inshallah, we're just gonna take this, inshallah. Let's start at a number that will support the center, inshallah. Let's start at 10 and then work our way up, inshallah. Anybody for $10? We got one for 10. Let me get a different number. Somebody throw a number out there. 20. I got 20. Did I hear another? Did I hear something more than 20? Do I hear 30? 30? Or we got 30? Do I hear 40? We only have 4 items, by the way, so if you're holding out, there's only 4 items. Yeah.
It's a mystery bag.
It's a mystery bag, but I told you kind of the mystery that's in it, so. Well, we're at 40? Are we at 40? I lost it. 30. We're at 30 over here. 30 going once. 30 going twice.
Remember, Khadijah was the rich one.
That's what's going on here. Yeah. 30 going once. 40. We got 40. How did that? 50. We're at 50. We only have 4 items, by the way, so don't hold out. Just give. We're at 50. Promise I'll 60. We're at 60. Make the next one 75. Inshallah.
I'll up 20 to her. 80.
So 80? Okay, we're at 80. We're at 80. 80 going once. 80 going twice. I'll add 22 if you can add another 20. An autograph from who? Yeah? So we're at 100 here. 100 going once. 105. Okay, we got 105. 105 going once. 105 going twice.
200.
200. We're at 200. Gotta up your bids. We're at 200, inshallah. We're at 200. 250? We're at 250. I kid you not, the money just comes. The money just comes. I'm never concerned when I'm doing an auction because you just get it. Alhamdulillah. 250. We're at 250. 250 going once. We got 3 more items, so 250 going twice. And sold, alhamdulillah, 250. So okay, so we're gonna do, you might get luck. Because he wants bookmarks. So the next one is literally an increase my knowledge bookmark. I hope so. I hope I'm not like misreading this. Yeah? Okay. There's one bookmark. It's a beautiful bookmark. Does it glow? I assume it's metal. Yeah, it is metal. It is definitely metal. It's like no show and tell. Very expensive. You're right. All right, let's start the bid, inshallah. The last one went for 250. So, Bismillah. Do I have 100 anywhere? Do you have 100? Alhamdulillah, we have 100. Alhamdulillah. Do I have 150 anywhere? Don't get me going. I can do this all night. 150. We're at 150. Alhamdulillah. Do I have 200 anywhere? I feel like I hyped this up real quick. We're at 200 though. No, we're at 150, we're at 150. Well, we're gonna get 200 inshallah. 150. What was it?
160.
160. 170. Let's make the next bid more than $10 increments inshallah. You guys can keep going. 200. Alhamdulillah, we're at 200. 250. We're at 250. Alhamdulillah. 250 the current bid. And there's only 2 items left after this. 300? 300. 350. That's 350 now. We're at 350. From our first brother, yeah. 350. And I think it's important.
Someone added 10, so 260 to the sisters.
400. What is it? Okay, we're at 400 here now. Oh. I think it's important for us to know that money that you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sacrifice. right? You're not going to give this if your intention is right and you're doing this solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is hard. It's hard for us to purify our intentions, right? But if you're giving it solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it back? And don't you believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it back in ways that you could never imagine? I kid you not, I've never given anything for Allah's sake. I have given for Allah's sake, inshallah, but I've never given anything for Allah's sake except that I got it back in ways that I could never imagine. And sometimes instantly, right away. It's like, wow, how did this happen? It's phenomenal. So right now we're at 400. 500, alhamdulillah. 600, we got 600. This is up 2 more items, guys. We're at 600, alhamdulillah. 600 going once. 600 going twice. I'm going to give it a second. Alright, 600 sold. Okay, 2 items left. And you can tell that the final item is a painting. But before we get to the painting, we have a box of truffle chocolates. I know you want it, bro. I know you want it. Oh, my bad. I got a dark and milk and white chocolate truffles. A gourmet collection. I don't know how to pronounce it. A gourmet collection. Let's just stick to the English. That's the problem.
There's French. Turkey.
There's some turkey. There's some turkey. Lots of chocolates. I know we did. Let's start with 100 with this. Who has 100 for this? You have 100. Alhamdulillah. 150. Alhamdulillah. 200. 200? No, we're at 150. Box of chocolates. I was about to read all the nutritional facts out. Alright, but we're at 150. We have one thing after this. So 150. Let's get to 200 inshallah. What was that?
$1 per calorie.
So inside is 2 pieces or 3 pieces. I can't do the math, but that would be over 1,000 for sure. So 150? 150 going once. 150 going twice. Let's get to 200. I think we can get to 200. We can get to 200. I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can. 450? MashaAllah. So 450. Alhamdulillah, we got to 450. Alhamdulillah. I was just asking for 200. We got 450. Alhamdulillah. Is there a 500? Here's what I can jump in. 450, we'll let this go for 450. But on this last painting, we're not going to give it just to anybody, okay? We're gonna, inshallah, everybody, I mean every single person in this room. Now, maybe not the kids, but every single person in this room. Let's just, inshallah, give whatever you can. Let's pull it up together, and let's end it that way, inshallah. So this box of chocolates for 450. And our final painting, the night train, inspired by the night train. So let me hear some numbers. I'll start at 200, inshallah. 250.
So we're adding it all together?
We're adding it all together. Is that 250 from you? So we're at 450 kind of that. We'll figure out who gets the payment after this. Well, 450. You might have to like flip a coin or something. 450. 550. You're giving 550. You're giving 550 or are you? We're pulling together. Yeah. 100. So 550. We're at 550. We're at 550. 70? So 620. How about that? 620. 900? Oh, 100. 620. Someone just do just write it down. So 100. That's 720. Did I hear another number? 720. 100. 820. Alhamdulillah. You got some for me? We're at 820.
850.
So you're adding 30. So 850. Alhamdulillah. We're at 850.
900.
875. Who's gonna get us 900? We'll just reach that milestone. 900? Okay, we're at 900. Just remember the dollar amounts that you're mentioning. We're at 900. And there's here's how you pay. You scan the QR code right here. How you pay, how you donate. We're at 900 after that. This is the final painting. We're just pulling together, inshallah. 900.
Someone added 40.
940, alhamdulillah. 940.
Is that the zone number on top of it?
Yes, it is. We're at 940.
So people have 30, they say 1,000.
We definitely break 1,000. We definitely break 1,000.
Add 60.
We're adding 60, so we're at 1,000. We're at 1,000, alhamdulillah. We're not stopping at 1,000, by the way. Come on. It's like y'all only going that way. You're definitely going over 1,000. So just yell out a number. Give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you'll see it back. I'll tell you that. Just give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Close your eyes and just yell out a number. And that number is going to be what's going to stick with you. Got it. Then open your eyes and scan the QR code.
I'll add
50. So 1,050. We're at 1,050. And I'll see, I feel like we, especially here, we take for granted the access to the Sanjay. We take for granted the access to the house of Allah. And the reality is there's our brothers and sisters around the world who are obviously being oppressed and don't have access to the house of Allah. Right? So many of our brothers and sisters around the world, in different regions across the world. So I think it's important for us to support and build these centers and know that you're aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last 4 digits of the zone number is 7077.
The sister wants to give a short little talk about her bathing.
Okay.
Whether it's a 97 or 47?
It's 7077. Yeah. Can someone confirm just the last 4 digits of 7077?
Yes.
Okay. Should I give the mic to anyone?
I think she'll just talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. I'll tell you a little bit about this painting, what it's by. made the night journey to Jerusalem, and during that night he got a lot of commands, one of which included the command of Salah. And you might not think that like it directly correlates to our goal and our mission right now, right here, but what I think all of it, the greater picture is of accountability and remembrance. And I want you guys to think of this opportunity that you've been given as a huge one. Because you don't know how your donations are going to add up on your scale someday. You might find out that you donated to Mass Queen's Youth and you raised the Hafiz or something. I don't know. Like you don't know where your donations are going to go to and the kind of community that it's going to fund. And the really interesting thing, like we just finished Charity Week, and during that time we donated to our ummah all around the world. That's one kind of donation. Donating to the people that are struggling is one kind of donation. But when you donate to a center like ours, you're planting a seed. You're planting a seed, you're planting roots in a community that you could flourish into who knows what, right? I've noticed a huge growth over the last year. And I don't know where I'll be in 5 years or 10 years, but I'm almost certain that Max Queens is going to be big. The community is only going to continue to grow, and when I'm not even thinking about the center anymore, there's going to be kids coming here and finding Islam and finding love for the Prophet ﷺ, for Islam, for their deen, and growing and improving. So think of every single cent. You could, even if you just give $1, that $1 could add up for you on your scales one day. So be free with your money. Remember that Allah always returns whatever you give. And that's all.
38%. I think also when your money is not yours, you yourself is not yours, right? Like everything and anything you do, your purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is your purpose. Everything else is just a means to the end, right? Like it's just meant to help you get by. But your money, what you have, doesn't belong to you. This is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. If your sight and your ability to hear and your ability to move is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted you, blessed you with, you don't deserve that. Those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you, you do not deserve it. He gave it to you. He blessed you with these things. And so I think it's important for us to remember that when we give, it's not like you're losing anything. You're doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do. The ones who give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who knows, maybe this thing that you're giving, maybe this is going to save you from the calamity. Maybe this is going to be a means of expiation for your sins. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will something to happen that you maybe never saw coming. And so I want us to remember that as we get to the last moments of this. We're at 1,050, and I know we can do more. The worst part is when we know we could do more, and when we stop, we're not stopping. I know we can do more. Another 50, so we're at 1,100. We're at 1,100.
1150.
We're at 1,150. We're at 1150. So 50. It's 1,200. So we're at 1,200.
Someone added 50.
100, 1,300. Someone added something? 50, so 1,350. I'm trying to do math, sorry. 1,350. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah helps those who help us. Right? There's hasanat that you get from this, from helping maintain this place of worship where people come and they pray and they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you need to believe that you're going to see that from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 100, so we're at 1,350, 1,450.
Does everyone know that hadith about how like you can get reward just for sitting in a masjid? It's like even if you fall asleep, even if you're just existing there, breathing there, like subhanallah, you could have been falling asleep during the halaqah, and still you would have gotten a reward. Can you imagine the reward you get for donating even a single dollar? Like even just our critical thinking and kind of figure out how that can add up for us, right?
So we're 40 50.
We're 14. 1500. So 1500. Who's that? 1500. 1500. $1,500 is our current, I don't know what it is, but that's how much we've raised for this painting. I know we can do more. Y'all gonna hate me after this. 15, we're at 1,500, and I know we can do more. I know we can.
We're 200 away from 3,000 total.
Wait, where are we at?
So to get to 3,000 total, everything.
Oh, gotcha. How much more? So we're 200 away from 3,000 raised for the night. But we're gonna break that. We're gonna break it. Just because, y'all gonna hate me after this, I'm telling you. We're at 1,500. How about this? I'm trying to do math. Give me a second. To get to 2,000, we need 500, right? I'll give 250 if you can match that 250. You'll double it? So what's the stipulation here? So if I give 250, you're gonna give 500.
If you get 500, I'll give 1,000.
Who's trying to help you with this 500? How do we escalate here? So you started with 250, so that's out the window. I'll give 500 if that guy sitting behind you gives 250. In green, I'm talking about. The one in green. Don't make me have to describe you more. Bro, just do it. I'm only pressuring because I know him, by the way. It's not because, you know. So the stipulation is I'll give 500 if we get 250 back there. And then we'll get 1,000 off that.
I'll be told you something.
What about the guy next to you?
I'm trying to tell.
So we got 200, we just need the other 50. From you, bro, from you. I'm laying this up for you, it's from you. Why is it so? He's giving 50. He's definitely gonna get 50. So we have 250 plus 500 is 750. No, plus 500 is 750. Plus 1,000 is 1,750. Plus 1,500 is
3,250.
3,250. How many left? We have 3,250. But I don't like the number 3,250. You said 50. 3,300. How many left? We count. Did we count your 50? We counted your 50, yeah? 3,350. We're at 3,350. We're at 3,350. How many left? Let's round this out because I don't like the number 3,350. It's a great number, but I think I really like the number 3,500. I think we're gonna stop at 3,500. So we're at 3,350 for this painting. We need 150 more. 150 more. 150 more, inshallah. We're at 3,350. We're at $33.50. We need $150 more. Who wants to send us home? We've been up here for a long time. He's been holding this painting for a very long time. $33.50. We're gonna get $150 over the phone. We're at $150. There's $35. Alhamdulillah. May Allah SWT reward all of you. And may Allah SWT still weigh heaven and scale of good deeds. May you see the reward for this and this stuff in the next. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Anything you want to say?
Pleasure meeting you brothers, and may Allah accept from you all.
Who's gonna get it though?
Who's going to get the painting?
If someone can round it for 4,000, they can keep the painting.
Does anybody want the painting?
Who wants it? You have to pay for it.
Anybody want the paintings like keep? How many?
Don't hurt my feelings, guys.
The one who gave most wants to give it to somebody else. We'll figure it out offline, guys. Inshallah, we'll figure it out offline.
There's a bake sale,
There is a bake sale going on,
so if you want
So
to
we're
grab
hungry.
something to eat, please go to
and you didn't get the box of chocolates.